Hello, everyone. Is this the last talk of the day? No, there's one more, right?
One more after.
All right. All right. Just curious. Just wonder how many more of these things I have to sit through. Wait, did I say that out loud? Okay, well, let's get started. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. This talk is, as you can tell, going solo, getting started on your own. I want to start out by saying that this isn't about pumping you up, saying that, you can do it, just get out there and, it's easy, because it isn't. This is supposed to be a very pragmatic talk. I wanted to give a blueprint, talk about what I've done, what I know other people have done. Just so you know, I have had to start my own thing about 5 times now. So I kind of have this down, and I have a pretty specific perspective, but my hope is that when you walk out of here, you'll have some notes, some pictures, things that you can actually go and do, other than just feel good about yourself, which you should. Maybe you're here because you are out on your own right now and you're wondering what other people are doing. Maybe you're wondering what it would be like to go out as a contractor and farm your services out. So let's just start there. But I always tell people that when you go out to be a solo contractor, writing code for companies or other people, it's sort of like turning the gain upon your career. That's the best way I can put it. Like, things are more scary. Everything means something more. Everything's more liberating and happy. It's a really fun thing to do. It's a great thing to do for your career, but a lot of people don't like that. And honestly, it's stressful. It really is stressful. And you're wondering when you're going to get paid next. You don't have the safety net of a big company behind you. And it involves a lot of failure, honestly. And when you do fail, it can hurt. And the problem is that people are afraid of failing. And I was just talking to a friend today about this, that a failure is something that really should be embraced. It really is, because failure, it just means you're trying. You're trying and you're learning, and you can use those skills to move forward. And it's okay to fail. Starting out on your own is hard, because the perspective of this entire talk is that you're actually starting a business. And when I say that to people, they don't believe me. Like, I'm just going to go and this person's going to pay me. Like, no, you actually are starting a business. And I'm going to probably assume that most of you are not going to believe a lot of the things I'm going to say, because everything I'm going to say today is going to be fairly obvious. But you're going to find yourself saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that part. And that's going to be tough. And the reason that people don't want to do that is because the idea of starting a business is a little bit terrifying, because you have to go through and jump through a lot of hoops, but it's actually really kind of straightforward. You wouldn't believe it. If you've got the plan in place, you can sell just about anything. This was all the rage when I was a kid in the 70s. People sold rocks in a box, and they called them pets. And my parents thought it was funny, and they gave me one, for Christmas. And I oh my God. It went viral. It was probably one of the very first things to go viral, and everybody thought it was hysterical. Here's another one. This is the Flow Bees. Anybody heard of this thing? You attach this to a vacuum cleaner, and it spins a razor and cuts your hair, so there's no mess, no fuss. It's ridiculous. This one's great. Live water. This one's making the rounds. Has anybody heard of live water? Unfiltered, uncleaned water straight from the ground. And you can buy this really cool crystal thing, and it comes straight out of the ground for $130. And it is alive with all kinds of goodness, like Giardia and E. coli and amoebas, and that's not true. They actually do test it, but these things are actually a problem that historically we've figured this out already. In fact, these plushies are great. This is another business that's out there, and I figure that people in Europe would really appreciate the plagues from history. Oh, this is a fun one. Yeah, this was Black Death, cholera, typhoid. Have you guys seen these things before? There's another one that I took out because it was too gross. It was different kinds of poop. You can buy that for your friend. So what I'm trying to get around to showing you is that the idea is actually secondary. Everybody says you have to have a good idea to have a good business. That's not really true. You just got to be able to execute and get your idea or get your product out there. The good news for you is you have an idea, and the idea is you and your ability to code things. That is already done. And believe it or not, you are a quarter way through the whole process of building a business. I also want to be positive here and say that if you go out on your own and you screw up or you don't have enough money or whatever's happening, you will be forgiven. Your partner or whoever is depending on your money, or maybe it's just you, you will forgive yourself. Even if you fail dramatically, you'll start again, because it can be a lot of fun and very rewarding. Even if you don't ever want to do it again, at least you did it, so now you know something. Okay, so let's start again and say, I want to say that this is all about you as a business. And this is a critical perspective. That you're not just going out as Joe or Jolene Smith and saying, hi, hire me, I'm a coder. You need to structure something, and it needs to start with recognizing that you are a business selling a service. Once you make that recognition and believe it and internalize it, then you start to realize that nothing is new in terms of starting a business. It's all been done before. The machinery has been there for hundreds and thousands of years. People know how to do this. And so you can literally look online at the things you need to do to start a business. I'm simplifying things a little bit, but these are the 4 things that you should focus on when you're going out on your own. Number 1, and I'm telling you, it is not, not obvious. It's totally obvious. Have a plan. Have a plan, a business plan. Not just like, how am I going to make money next week, but an actual business plan. I'm going to go through this in detail in a second. Product we've already done. That's you, and it's your ability to code. You need support services, something to like infrastructure to help you out. And then you just need a network of people that you know. In other words, marketing and sales. And then you just need to execute it, honestly. And I'm telling you, it seems so, you're probably sitting there going, why am I sitting through this talk when this person is telling me everything I know? And the reason is that as I get into the details, you're not going to want to do it. I can almost promise you. So let's get to it. Start off with a plan. What do I mean by a plan? Has anybody here ever filled out a business plan? Okay, good. There's a few people. Not a lot of people actually do that. I only did it once, and that's the last time I filled out or I started a business. I just never bothered with it. I thought, well, I'm going to write code and sell this or write code for this company. Snap a picture of this. This is really just what a business plan is. What's your name? What's your product? Who are you going to sell it to? What are your starting costs? What are your monthly costs? Projected. What do you think you're going to make? That's it. Of course, you can get more detailed here in terms of the things you want to fill out. But this, in essence, is a business plan. So let's start with the very first thing, the business name. This is where people put the brakes on. Like, wait, okay, it's just me. Do I really need a business name? Yeah, because you're going to be a business. So what would you even pick? So there's a couple of things that you could try, just to throw some names out there. You could use your street. I did that once when I started out a long time ago. I dreamed of living on a street on Kauai where I used to live, and it was Wiki Road. And so I just said, all right, domain's available. That's what it's going to be. So that was the name of my business. You can use a nickname. My friend Dave Ward, when he was younger, his nickname was Incosia, which I don't know what that means, but he named his business that. Song titles, pet's name, anything. Just something that you can just tell people and give them a card or whatever. Things to avoid. If you tie yourself to a technology like node services or like Richard Campbell was laughing about this yesterday, .NET Rocks is the name of their podcast. Well, if .NET was ever to go away, then their podcast goes away. So if you ever decide to change what you do and you're .NET Forever Incorporated, then that's going to be a problem for you. Something clever or goofy, I would highly recommend you don't do, because here's the thing with having a cool business name or something that is just relatable, is you are going to be spoken about in whatever company you work for. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get into someone's back pocket at a company. And they're going to say, oh, I've got this person, and they work at, and they're going to say your company name. Like my company's name is Big Machine, current company. I picked it out of the blue. It just was a name that I thought that people could repeat and not feel like an idiot. So that's my guiding light on that one. So let's just put a placeholder in for your business, you Incorporated. So you can just mentally put your business name up there right now. And if you're starting to write this thing, you might just fill in the blanks like, I don't know, I'm going to write code for people or companies. That's my product. And I'll work for whoever's going to pay me. And I don't know, cost? What are you talking about? This is the best part of a business plan. When you sit and you stare at it, you go, I need more detail. It doesn't need to be a lot of detail, but it forces you to think through everything. So let's add some more detail. Maybe you want to be a hired gun, someone that goes in and writes code per hour, doing front-end work. Maybe you want to go in and be a triage expert and go in and fix a system that's blown up. Could be anything, but you could detail the various services that you're willing to do. The market is something that is critical. Do you want to work for big enterprise or do you want to work for a startup? Write it all out. And then the starting costs, this is something that varies, but I usually tell people have 2 months in the bank. 2 months of money in the bank, and then some money to actually pay people to start the company for you. you're going to have a lot of services. And that usually requires, for me, it was about 12,000 total dollars, US. So I just translated that to pounds because I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. And then a monthly budget. I have about $500 in services that I pay for. I'll get to those in just a bit. When you start to break out the things that you're willing to do, you start to see things a little bit differently about what you're going to be billing for. And instead of just writing code at, say, 50 pounds an hour, you are now having different rates for the different things that you can do, and you start to conceive of them as individual services. This means that when you talk to clients, you can have a different conversation other than what's your rate, which is what a lot of people have to go through when they're subcontracting, and they talk to a friend, oh, my boss needs somebody, you can come in, how much are you per hour? Well, you can get away from that because you are now a business, as I keep saying, and you can think of things in terms of project billing. That is a savior of people who don't want to get paid 50 pounds an hour. They can say, well, 2 weeks worth of work and you want me to triage this system, that's going to cost you 5,000 pounds. How you spend that time is up to you. That's a vendor to company relationship, and I strongly push you to do that. Now, at this point, I could talk for the next hour about billing and different ways of billing, but I'm just going to jump because I have other things I need to talk about. Billing clients is an art, and getting money out of them is kind of difficult to do sometimes. We'll talk a little bit about that. But in terms of how you bill, that's a very detailed subject. I would just push you to think about project-based billing. Have you guys heard of project-based billing? Is this a new thing? Hopefully, good, yes. So services, when you start doing services for people that hire you or hire your company, you're trading time for money. And at this point, you start thinking about your company as an abstraction. So we can apply some programming principles here. You're trading your time for money. And you have to think about scaling. Can you scale that? Well, how much money do you want to make? The curve on that, the scaling curve, is kind of just, you can't really make all that much money. And one of the problems that you get into is, as your own boss, you have administrative things that you need to do. And that tug of war causes a lot of pain in your own head, and also with your family when you're working on the weekends and you want to go out and do something, and I got to do my books. So we have to keep that in mind, thinking about how much we actually want to spend on our business each month, because the idea is we want to farm out as much as we possibly can to other services. Again, I know that sounds obvious, but when we start talking about those services in just a second, you'll see what I mean. If we start out believing that we're going to build a business and put the infrastructure in place, later on when you start working on something that's interesting, or you write a bit of code that's interesting, or an open source project you're involved with and you think, I could sell that, then you start selling assets. And when you start selling assets for money, that's when it starts rolling in. I'm going to talk a little bit about this towards the end. But this is one major reason why you want to have a business in place. Because once you have that idea, you want to be able to sell it without having to think about, oh gosh, what do I do now? You want it in place, ready to go. So again, I'll get to that later on. Let's talk about support services. In other words, infrastructure for you incorporated. As I go through this, I have a feeling I'm going to get some resistance, which is fine. Please just consider what I'm offering to you, that I've learned this the hard way over the last 20 years. I consider the next few slides to be critical in all of this. The first thing that you should do is get yourself an accountant. In the States, I think they're called CPAs over here. Is that right? Okay, well, most of the advice that you're seeing is US-based stuff because it's my experience. But get yourself a certified accountant, somebody that you can sit with, show them your business plan that you've already written up in great detail so they can read over it, and they could say, oh, sure, I know how to structure your business for you. In fact, I will go register your name. I'll get you verified with the government, X, Y, and Z. Here's the documentation and everything you need. That's going to cost you about, well, in the US, it costs about $750 to $1,000. A CPA does everything, and this comes from a financial perspective. They set you up, they get you in motion, and I didn't know this. And my best friend is a CPA, which is funny. And one day he said, why don't you just let me do this stuff? And I'm not going to pay you money, joker. And then he said, yeah, it only costs this much. Believe me, you'll have a return. And he outlined the things he was going to do. 5 days later, in the mail comes the whole bookkeeping stuff that I needed to get my corporation running and off the ground. The man is a wizard. I never believed that a CPA could be that necessary. He has consistently saved me money. He saved me money primarily because he set my business up with the right entity. in the United States. He has helped me dodge tax holes, which would cause me to be audited and anything else. He made me see that I needed a bank account, and I'll talk about that in a second. He made me see a lot of things, so I trust him now with absolutely everything. Every single year on my taxes, he saves me between 15 and 20,000 US. And that's not an exaggeration at all. I'm able to let him do all that work, and he comes back to me and says, here's how I've shuffled things around for you, and this is how we're going to set things up. And I say, okay, go for it, and you're done. To give you an example of what I mean, in the United States, when you file your taxes, you get a number of things that you can deduct. So one of them is healthcare, there's also insurance costs, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can deduct. And a lot of people will use software to do this in the US, even businesses. And they'll just put all their expenses in, and the software will decide what you can deduct. It's a painful process. It's a lot of work. My CPA said, you don't want to have deductions, you want to have expenses. So get yourself a credit card that's in the name of your business. And then when you go out and you want to buy something, like a computer or a lunch that you're out with a colleague, then you just expense it. That goes against your books. The Internal Revenue Service never sees it. And the only way they'll ever see it is if you get audited. And at that point, if it's a bookkeeping error, you just shrug, whoops. But if it's a bad deduction, which is the other scenario, if it's a bad deduction, they can actually audit you, and they can charge you penalties and so on. Just by doing this has lightened my load. I mean, you would not even believe how much money this alone has saved me. Okay, so I mentioned a bank account. After you go to your CPA with your business plan, he's going to give you, or she's going to give you back a bunch of information about your identification numbers and everything else. You can take that to a bank and then get a business bank account. This is another thing that was difficult for me to realize, is that if you mix business money with personal money, life is terribly difficult because you can't separate where the money is coming and going and who's spending what. If you have business expenses isolated to a business account, life is much easier. So this is pretty straightforward. Spend the money, get an account. I think a friend of mine said that business bank accounts over here are free. I'm not sure. In the US, they cost about $20 a month. Completely worth it. The next thing is a lawyer. And this is where I always get pushback. People always feel like, why should I get a lawyer? I'm not going to sue anybody. And the power of a lawyer is much more than suing people. It is your big stick. And I'll get into that story in just a second. Finding a lawyer is actually really easy. You talk to a friend. Same thing with getting an accountant. Just talk to some friends. Talk to people that do this. You will find an accountant. You'll find a lawyer. Often you'll find ones that do exactly this exact service for individual coders that have a business. A lawyer will check the CPA's work and make sure that everything is legal, and making sure that the CPA is on tip-top and that everything that you're setting up is not going to get you into trouble. A lawyer comes in very handy when you have clients that decide that they're going to pull out the last-minute negotiation with you before you get paid. This happens with every single client all the time. And as you get experience being out on your own, you start to build in a buffer because you know it's coming, and then you just kind of deal with it. It takes a while to establish a trust relationship with clients. Sometimes you get a good one straight away. Other times you will just get the run-of-the-mill client that says, yeah, sure, I'm happy to pay your final invoice. Before you do that, let's talk about the work. We have a few changes we need to make sure they're in there. Oftentimes, just do it. Other times they really try to hold your feet to the fire. I had a client want me to do an additional about 40 hours of work, almost changing everything. And they tried to blame it on me. And we were going back and forth in email, and I CC'd my lawyer. And I just said, I'm copying my lawyer on this right now. I told my lawyer that this was going to happen. I'm CCing my lawyer. Every conversation we're going to have at this point, from this point on, my lawyer's going to be involved. At that point, I got paid, like within a couple days. And I know it sounds cliche, but people that work in corporations especially don't want to hear from your lawyer. Even if it's just a polite letter. If a lawyer sends something on legal letterhead, then they have to go through their legal department at a big company. Usually they do. In fact, whenever I worked at a bigger company, they said, if you ever got anything that's from a lawyer, we have to be involved, so make sure you send us an email. Just that act alone on their part, talking to their legal team, their boss is going to say, what are you doing? And it's going to bring down a whole heap of trouble. Of course, if you get to this point, you're cutting ties with your client because you don't want to be threatening, obviously, but having a lawyer just to kind of casually CC and ask certain questions is a good thing. A personal story, I wrote a book called The Imposter's Handbook. I had it printed, and the printer managed to send out the wrong template to all of its physical printers. And so what happened was they sent out the wrong version of the book, and they took it offline to fix the problem. They took it off for 3 weeks. Over the holidays, I lost thousands of dollars, and they stopped responding to me. And I kept emailing them, and I said, the next email is going to be with my lawyer. I CC'd my lawyer, and I said, this is your last warning. Next one's going to be a nastygram, and then I'm suing you for negligence. And I had the book back online within 3 hours. I'm telling you, this is one of the best things ever. And my lawyer said, you don't have to pay me. This is just what I do. They just kind of hang out, and then when you need them, they cost about $100 an hour. I know it sounds like a lot, but wow, it's so worth it. Let's talk about books. This is the next thing you're going to need to absolutely make sure you set up. After you get your CPA and your lawyer and everyone's happy, then you get to and you have your bank account, then you set up your books. This is where CPA's advice is golden. How do you set up QuickBooks? I don't know if anyone in here has ever done it. It is not the easiest thing. It is intimidating. But QuickBooks works really well. If your CPA is on the ball, what they'll probably do is say, I'll set up your company for you, let me out your QuickBooks, and they'll structure your QuickBooks for you, and you're done. That's time that you don't have to spend working on books. It's time you can bill a client, and your CPA is just probably going to charge you $50 or $60 an hour. In fact, they're not going to do it. They're going to have their bookkeeper do it. So I would say if you don't know which one to do, just use QuickBooks. The pricing on this is great. It might be tempting to look at the $5 a month thing and say, oh, that's perfect, but that's just for individuals. You are going to be a business, so pay the $25 a month. It is absolutely worth everything. The reason why, if I can just go back to this slide for a second, is this is going to be the health of your business. There's a dashboard on here that's going to track what's coming and going. You're going to invoice people through here. You can also accept payment through here. You can take credit cards, PayPal, and a bunch of other things. So QuickBooks is great. This is the company that I use, which is based in the UK. I love it. It's free agent, costs $25 a month. It does just about the same things. It's a little bit more friendly here and there, but same thing. You can send out invoices. You can do all your money tracking all through one interface, which is great. I just threw a bunch of stuff at you, but I want to really quickly recap this. And I also want to challenge you a little bit, because I'm wondering if I threw so much at you, like, oh, I don't think I can do all this. This is just so much work. And the truth is, it really isn't. Once you know what the plan is, what the execution plan is, you just have to go ahead and do it. Find a CPA, open a bank account, get a lawyer, and then set up your books. To find the CPA and the lawyer, just talk to friends, of family, whatever, and you'll get a name easily within probably a couple days. We're almost done, believe it or not. We have some extras at the end. The next thing is, how are we actually going to find the work? And that's where establishing a network comes in. So I like to think of it as establishing a network as opposed to going out doing marketing and sales and just handing someone your card and saying, give me work. So yeah, let's go into a network. And this is actually, I had this business card once, and it worked. Of course I didn't. How do you establish a network? And rather than standing up here and saying, go out and talk to people, go out and talk to people, that's number one. But how do you actually ask them about any possible work they might have? Honestly, you could be that direct if you know and trust the person. But what I have done in the past is when I decided to go out on my own, I just told my boss that's what I was going to do. Once I made my mind up and I had the money saved, I told my boss, I'm actually not going to come into the office. I'm going to be working from home. Because everything I'm doing here, I can do there, and I'll be more efficient and better. Now, for a lot of folks, the initial reaction to that is, well, that's great for you, but I can't do that because I work at big bank or big this or big that. You'd be surprised at exactly what you can do. Let me explain. I worked in an analytics company doing heavy, intensive database work. And I had set up a way to VPN in and get the data and work with my machine remotely. And in fact, I started doing that 2 days a week. And finally, I got so tired of driving from Marin in San Francisco, Marin County. It was an hour's commute when there was no traffic down to Mountain View. And if there was traffic, it was just over 2 hours. My daughter had just been born, and I just realized this is not a good life. And so I just told my boss, I'm not driving down here anymore. And after I'd been working from home 2 days a week, I am not driving down here again. I'm going to be working from home. In my mind, I was ready to jump because I had saved up some money, and I thought, well, I'm going to go out and try and contract. My first thought is, I'm going to see if I can contract with my existing company. I was about to bring that up when my boss told me straight up, I can replace you, and kind of had an ego trip on me. And I said, that's totally fine. Do whatever you think you need to do. And I did not challenge them. And I just played the part of now, I am a business owner in my own head. And I just said, whatever you need to do, but our relationship has now changed. I write code for you, but I'm going to do it on my own terms because I am now a business, and we are two businesses working together. I've done this twice now. The first time it worked out really well. The company in Mountain View has gone away. But what I was able to do was I was able to start working from home, and then I was able to just go completely on contract, off of salary, and then I moved to Hawaii. And my boss was great. He said, do not tell anyone that you work here from Hawaii. I'm like, all right, I could do that. I kept that contract for 3 years, and I was more productive and had a better outlook on life, and they saw that. And so everything worked out really well. And I finally let them go because I started contracting with Microsoft. And eventually that led to a full-time job. And then I left Microsoft. But when I left Microsoft, I did the exact same thing. I said, instead of quitting, I just walked into my boss's office and said, I'm going to reduce back down to contract. And I was already in the vendor system, and they said, sure, all right, that's fine, whatever you want. And so I took a few contracts with them, and then I moved on to do other things. I was telling my friend about this, and the advice I was offering to people, and he said, yeah, you're you. And sure, I write my blog, I have followers on Twitter, whatever. It doesn't matter. In fact, I flip it on its head. I'm me because I do these things. I go out to user groups. I write a blog. I do open source. So I did those things. I don't know if you sat through Troy Hunt's talk today, but he talked about those things to just put yourself out there. Write down the things that interest you. Get out there and do stuff. On a business level, this is really, really important as well. Just be responsive, transparent, and on time. And what this leads to is you being on speed dial. And I'm not joking about speed dial. If you start working with a company and you get in with a certain cost center, let's say a big company, and you get in with a certain group and you do well for them, and by doing well, all you have to do is show up and then do the work and then be transparent about it. They will call you every single time because you will become their person, their go-to person. And honestly, it's a funny line from, I think it's Woody Allen, I'm not sure, but 80% is, it's Groucho Marx. Anyway, 80% of success is showing up, and that's true. And especially as a coder, you just respond to an email, within a few hours. You would be surprised, contractors out there, especially programming contractors, can be so ridiculously rude. But if you're not rude, and you just respond, and then you also are transparent about what you're doing, people will love you. And then it just grows from there because they're going to tell other people in the company, and you're going to keep getting calls. The other thing you can do is when you're out and about, maybe not at a conference, but maybe you're on vacation, strike up conversation with people. And I don't know if I'm not naturally social, but sometimes if I'm having a beer or something like that, you can just start chatting with a person or whatever could come up. You would be surprised at how often it turns back to talking about work. I know that there's differences in the UK versus America where that's like the first thing out of our mouths. What do you do? I know over here it's a little bit different. It might be like, what's your name or how are you? It's something a little bit more polite. But over in America, it's like, so what do you do? And that happens a lot. In fact, this is where I was just 10 days ago. My wife bought me a trip to Hawaii for Christmas, which was amazing. So I went to Hawaii, and I was sitting there enjoying the sunset. That is my beer, and I snapped a picture. I said, I'm going to put this in my slides. I was a very happy person, and the person next to me, just right here off screen, it was like, hey, what are you taking a picture of? We just started talking. It turned out he worked for the NSA. Yeah, and it was a great conversation. We just started talking about all kinds of things. And we sat there for, I want to say 2 hours. And it turns out he was doing some heavy, heavy data work. And next thing I know, he's giving me his business card. He doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't know I'm a speaker and blah, blah, blah. I just told him what I knew about databases. And next thing I know, he's giving me his business card. And he said, well, when you move back over here, let's talk. I'm like, whoa, did you know Snowden? He knew Snowden. No, I'm not kidding. He did. No, because Snowden worked in Hawaii, and they worked in the... It's probably all I can say about that, honestly. Can you just rewind it a second there? Woo! Okay, point is, you start to get this thing where you just open yourself up from either going to user groups or just being around other people. You start to open up. You have a blog, you're tweeting a little bit more, and you just have to open your persona up a little bit, and the opportunities start coming to you. And once you kind of engage with people, it's really, once they find you agreeable, really the process going from there to hiring you on is typically pretty short, especially if they find out you're a business, as opposed to just being a person who's going to come on as a 1099 contractor. Now that you're a 1099 is a reference to U.S. tax. Do you guys have 1099s over here? Does that make sense? No. It just means you're an individual and they're hiring you outside the company. Once they know you're a business, it becomes much easier because then you just have to become a vendor for their company. And once you're in as a vendor, they can just put a work order in and boom, bang, you got lots of money. So let's say once you start working with them, how can you be a little bit more communicative? So the first thing that I did when I started my new company, Big Machine, is I just created an org on GitHub. And every project I have in there for a client is locked away in a private repo. I pay the money, and if I have a private repo, the client can see what I'm doing. That's transparency. That's all there is to it. Using Git is wonderful. They can see my check-ins, and I make sure to not use bad words, and they can leave issues, and it's good to go. You don't have to use GitHub. There's GitLab, of course, but I got to be pretty quiet because Phil Hack is right next door here. If he hears me talk about GitLab, something's going to come flying through the wall. Also, if you have a big client, you could spend the money on something like Basecamp or some online planning thing where you can exchange documents, exchange messages, because sometimes, and this is what happened to me, establishing a relationship with a company, from company to company, carves a really unique space for you inside your client's company. And what I mean by that is, I used to get hired in what were called skunkworks projects, little greenfield things where they're trying to replace existing systems with new technology. And they would call me up and say, "You're the .NET guy, right?" I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Well, we've got this little project that we're trying to push forward. It's this little cost center inside this big org, but we have free reign. But I can't use any of the company's assets. I can't use our Jira or whatever it is they're using. I'm like, "Oh, I got you covered. We got Basecamp, I've got Git, we're all set." And like, "Oh, great, thank you." And so I can now host the stuff for them. It's a little bit expensive, but it's actually really, really, really useful, and it makes clients really happy. Another one would be Trello. Anything to make them feel like they can see the work that you're doing. Honestly, that's it. I mean, I have more to talk about, but I'm just saying that is the nuts and bolts of having a plan, having a coherent structure to move forward. Instead of just going out there and saying, "Hire me," which you could do, but if you want it to scale and to last, putting that structure in place allows you to do different things. And let's talk about that, because that's where the fun is. That's where the future is. And it's easy to think about what's going to happen in the next couple of years, 2 years, but what about 10 years from now? I mean, who here has thought about 10 years from now, or even 20? And I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can tell you 20 years ago, I had no idea where I would be. So here's some extra stuff. If you really, really want to think long term, you can start to think about branding. You come up with a business name, well, what if we had it be a brand instead of just a business? Or instead of just, I write code as a business description. Or maybe something you can elevate it to a little bit more of a bigger concept. Why branding? Because when I started a company called techpub.com years ago, and the corporation name was something different. The corporation name was actually Massive Studios. And Massive Studios started a brand called TechPub. I sold that brand to Pluralsight. They didn't buy the company, they bought the brand. So that was really easy for me. It was actually super easy for my lawyer to go in and say, "Okay, they're buying the IP for the brand," boom, bang, and it was a really easy transaction. Just saying, you can think about branding as well as just being a business. Business cards and a website. This is all about appearance and all about bowling people over with the appearance of knowing what you're doing. So how do I even do a brand? How do I go about starting a business in a visual sense? Something a little bit more, that extra step to make you look amazing. I went to 99 Designs. I spent, I think it was $500 on a competition. Who here knows what 99 Designs is? Okay, for those who don't know, it's a crowdsourced way of doing all kinds of graphics, anything design related. You go in and you start what's called a competition, and a bunch of designers from all around the world try and make something for you. You just have to describe what you want. So I went there and I described big machine and what I was trying to do, video tutorials, blah, 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 and I got all kinds of funky designs back. Some of them I liked and some of them not really. I kind of like that one in the top left corner. It's a little bit weird, but the one down there in the middle is good. I had about 50 designs to choose from, and it's really fun because you leave feedback and you hit little buttons. It becomes a game. This one is weird. This one's really weird, isn't it? It's like an electric Bible or something. I'm not sure what they're trying to think of. As far as business cards go, I hope you can see this with the light in here. I hope that it looks good down there. But this is the business card for my friend Jeffrey Grossenbach, who ran Peepcode. And Peepcode did video tutorials, much like TechPub did. His thing was just, he wanted everything to look just right, highly polished. So he went out and got a letter-pressed quarter-inch business card that had the name of the business, hopefully you can see that, pressed into the card with his title and name over the top. And he showed me this card once, and I just like, this is ridiculous. The problem is that if you order this, I think it's $750 for about 200. So that would be about 500 pounds for 200 cards. Yeah, and it's a lot of money, but to him it was worth it. As far as a website goes, again, if you're in Troy Hunt's talk earlier, he talked about using Ghost to get yourself started. I differ with him on that. I like Ghost. It's fine for blogging, but to me, a website is something a little bit more than just a blog, although feel free to use it as a blog. If you start a company, you want this website to represent you and what you do. Now, Juliana here does all kinds of design and other things. She might have a company in the background, but the company is her, so she's front and center. And I love this because I don't know if you can see the URL up there, but it's julia.na. It's her name, Juliana, which I think is just wonderful. That just says so much about her and what she does. It says WordPress, by the way. Again, with another WordPress template. I like this one because something is missing from the front. In fact, something is missing from all over it. It's the person's name. And they're making a statement here that they're so good they don't have to tell you who they are. And I'm not kidding. This is a really high-end designer that makes a lot of money, and he doesn't take cold calls from anybody, which I thought was funny. I want to throw that in there. This is WordPress as well. So this is where I differ with Troy. Ghost works, but Ghost is limited. And I think Troy earlier today said that it's full of all kinds of junk and widgets and buttons that you have to figure out. And that's true. But WordPress also has a ton of capabilities that help you promote yourself and help you represent yourself online. WordPress is WordPress. What can I say? I just pushed my blog over to it once again, and I've decided just to leave it there and to stop thinking about it, because my blog is not only my blog, it's my website that represents me. And so there's all kinds of projects up there that I do. There's podcasts that I run and so on. The one thing that I really like about it is you can go to a site like Envato or ThemeForest or Monster Template, pay $40 and get a really, really high-end template that looks amazing. You upload it, install it. You can load up some demo content that they'll just put in a bunch of stuff for you, but they'll make it look amazing, so it'll help you just fill out what you need. This is my blog. It's just got a simple statement on the front, like so many other blogs do. And at the very top there, you can see, well, if you want to read posts I write, here's my About page, publications, and podcasts. Just simple stuff like that to let people know who you are. But also, I bought this design for, I think, $45. I don't want to mess with this because I have other things to do. So that's why I like WordPress. If I need something on my blog, I don't have to think about doing it. I didn't know Troy was going to be talking about his blog, but I did want to point out this is Troy's blog. And you can take a look at his structure too. And he just puts at the top what he does, and he's got a picture of himself, and he says, hello, I'm Troy. That's it. This is Felienne, our keynote speaker. WordPress again on this site. Again, just a little bit about her and what she does. I like this one a lot. I like this one because it's Heather. She's one of the speakers here. It's her smiling. Isn't that great? And if you could imagine thinking, well, you're telling somebody at, let's say, the corporation you work at, well, I have this coder, her name's Heather, here's her website, go check out her skills, and this is the first thing that you see. Wouldn't that be kind of like, yeah, I'm sure she'll work out just fine. And then she has all her stuff at the very top and her experience and so on. So what do you do? Well, I recommend that you just create a blog, use WordPress, use Ghost, whatever you want, make it look really simple, put your name in the top left corner, put the things that you do in the bar right there, the things that you specialize in, a hobby, so people can know what you like to do on the side, and then your recommendations, things that you like. Just start like that, and you're good to go. If you want to go the full tilt business route and you have some references, then put those up there too, but that might take a while to get going. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, you're telling me to be a business, but now you're telling me to put personal stuff on the site. The business is the mechanics of getting money and scaling things forward. You are actually the thing that you're trying to sell. You are the product. So put your product front and center, you. And then everything else is going to cycle in your business. After a few years, you'll have things that you can add up here like a portfolio of your satisfied clients and testimonials and so on. I love that picture. I just have to say I'm so proud of myself from the first impressions of EF Core. Like that? I did that for you guys, man. Come on. Okay. Now we get to the fun part. Who cares about all of this? Right, here I am talking about all these things, and let's say you do it. You go back, you get your plan, you get your lawyer, you get your CPA, and you're starting to do all this stuff, and you're a contractor, and whoop-de-doo. Oh my gosh, I have a slide out of order. Sorry. I wanted to show Scott Hanselman's blog. Okay, I'll get to the who cares part in a second. Sorry, pretend you didn't see that. God, speaker foul. What I was going to say is, if you're having trouble starting out with your own personal site, just copy someone. And this is the part where I get to confess that I copy everything from Scott. So if you're ever wondering why I'm such a jerk online, it started with him. I hope he is not here. He's not here, good. Okay, so I would say, start with what Scott does. And you can see, hi, I'm Scott. Well, I copied my thing. Hi, I'm Rob. I copied that from him. Why not? And he has a little bio about what he does and his stuff at the top. So you can just follow along with what people do. This brings up a problem for a lot of people, me especially, because I am not a natural marketer. I'm not a salesperson. In fact, I wrote a book and just released it about 2 weeks ago, and I forgot to tell people that I sold it. Forgot to tell people. So I wrote the blog post today in the morning because I woke up and I'm like, oh, you idiot. You haven't told people yet that it's for sale. It's for a lot of reasons. I can't stand telling people about me and like, hey, I'm awesome. That just doesn't feel right to me. And it's an actual paradox. And this is something that Chad Fowler said once in a conference that I loved. In fact, it was at Dev Day in Poland at your conference. And he said, marketing is a moral imperative. And I just thought, what in the heck does he mean by that? And his idea was, if you do good work or you make something that's amazing and you think it can benefit somebody else, save them time, save them money, or you can help them out of a hole, you owe it to them to tell them about it from a moral standpoint. And I like how he went straight to the morals. So I try and think of things that way. So if you have a hard time doing that, just remember you're helping people out with your awesomeness. Okay, now we get to the why part, which is my slide problem. Why are we doing all of this? So what? So where do we want to end up? What do we want to do in a couple years? Are we just doing this to get free for the moment and feel happy that we're out on our own? Well, remember when I started out before, I said there's 4 parts of this whole plan. There's actually 5. And I needed to leave the last part to the end because I needed to build the case and build the structure and everything. The very first thing that you should actually have is an exit strategy. How is this all going to end? Who was it? Someone, I think it was either When Harry Met Sally, or people do this. They watch the end of the movie first. That's the reason why that is you want to know where you're going. Where are you going to end up? Do you want to be rich? Do you want to be rolling in cash? Well, that's a totally viable goal. Other people want to be famous. You want to be the Tiger Woods of .NET or whatever the heck. For me, my end game is I just want to retire. I want to, right now, with the business I have, I want to build up enough stuff that people like that they can just keep buying it. And then I can kind of work less. I don't ever want to stop working. By retirement, I mean I'm probably going to work like 5 to 10 hours a week. I don't ever want to stop because I enjoy what I do. But in 20, 30, 40 years from now, I just want to be fishing. I was actually out there fishing right then. I want to be out there fishing. That's what I want. To chill out and have this business do something for me. Other people, they want to sell their company straight away. 5-year exit, that's what I want. Other people have an idea where, well, we'll work on it for 6 years and we'll build up this big MVP thing, and then we'll sell it to some other company and make $1 million. When you start working on your own as a solo contractor, you go in a very familiar arc. In fact, if you ask most of the speakers here, most of them have done it. They've started out, they started blogging, they started getting their name out there, they get contracts, and the contracts get bigger. You become more in demand. You can follow Troy's career on this exactly. He now goes and charges top dollar to do a lot of amazing talks and discussions. All he has to do is start charging money for Have I Been Pwned, and he's going to be able to retire tomorrow. You start getting these ideas for these assets that you can start charging money for. Great example is Railscast. When Ruby on Rails came out, Ryan Bates did 10-minute screencasts every week, and he did that through, I think, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then he started charging money for it, and he was able to stop working forever. It was great. You can end up like Udi Dahan here, who is so successful in his trajectory that he can have a website that looks like this. I mean, seriously, look at that thing. That is so bad in every way. I mean, like, there's no color to that. I think he just wrote, I don't know, anyway. So Udi started off doing a lot of consulting. He did SOA, Service-Oriented Architecture, as many people might know here. And then he created N-Service Bus. That's his product. That's his asset. That asset is driving now his business. This is how you can scale your business that way. I already mentioned Troy and his workshops. There's Julie Lerman, who has established her career doing Entity Framework. She goes out and does consulting and mentoring. She sits with a bunch of people in a room and gets paid a good amount of money to do those things. The idea is scaling you. That's why we're putting this business in place. So you can get to your exit strategy. You can get to your end goal. But you need to have that plan and that structure underneath you to get you there. And so many times people get to a point where they realize, I'm becoming successful. What am I going to do? I don't have the infrastructure and the plan. I got to stop what I'm doing, pivot, change, and do all this other stuff. And it's disruptive. If you start, however, with just the basics, it doesn't cost a lot of money. If you start, however, getting yourself an infrastructure, starting with an exit strategy, having a business plan so you know what you're going to do in the next 20 years, and then establishing your network, you can grow this and then retire happily or go wherever you want to go. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, please shout them out. I know this is, as I mentioned, pretty obvious stuff that I mentioned, but as you get into the details, it really touches on some things that aren't so obvious, and hopefully you've learned something today. Thank you. So I think we have about 10 minutes. I ended a little bit early. So if anybody has questions, please just yell them out. Yeah?
You pointed out there's a difference between a freelancer and a business.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So the question is, what's the difference between a freelancer and a business? A lot of times what a company will do, at least in the United States, and I think it's the same over here, is when you come on as a freelancer, it's like you work there, but you don't. They're paying you hourly, and they just want to know your rate, and then you give them a timesheet, and then they pay you. It's just taxed differently for them and for you. They don't have to give you benefits and so on. If you're a business, however, that's different. Sometimes it takes a little bit more to get you set up to get paid because you're a legal entity as a business. So you have to submit a bunch of paperwork to usually their accounting department. And then you come online as a vendor. And if you're a vendor in a big company, that means that they can send you a purchase order. Purchase order is just like a bid, and you can send back your estimate, and they approve it. And sometimes you go through this rigmarole. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And then you can then it comes down to project-based billing. So the idea is that your contact can call you and say, well, we got this thing I need you to fix. And you say, well, it'll be about 1,200 pounds, let's say. And they go, okay, just send me the estimate, I'll get it approved. And then you say, all right, usual retainer, half up front. And they go, okay, got it, check's in the mail. And it actually makes things much smoother. Does that answer your question? And also business to business has tax considerations. In the US, the company doesn't have to send you any tax information. It's called corp to corp. And so when I do work for people, I always do it from my corporation to their corporation. And they have less paperwork, it's less hassle for them. And when they pay me, they don't have to send me any tax information at all. And they don't have to report it to the IRS. It goes down as an expense on their books. Does that make sense? I know I'm dumping a lot of business stuff on it, but it's like, It's been so helpful. And my accountant actually is the one who told me all this. So I let him worry about it. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
So you left your permanent job
Mhm.
to work from home.
Yes.
How much of your work is still home-based versus having to go into your client and sit at the desk and do what they need you to do?
That's an interest. The question is, when you work from home, how much do you have to go into the clients to talk to them and to be with them, basically, or?
What do you get? Like, are there some contracts where they say, we'll pay you this amount, but we want you in every single day?
Yeah, I say no to that. And the reason why is if you take the mindset that you're a business, at least for me, this is the way I look at it. If someone requires you to be on premises, that means you're getting in your car and you're driving, and there's a whole bunch of extra money that goes along with it, and your time. And I mean, if they're going to pay me to drive, I'm going to bill them for it. And if they really need me there, then my rate's going to, in my mind, when I put together the work order, my rate's going to probably double, and because it's inconvenient and it sucks. And if you don't want to do it, say no. I mean, it would be like your company calling a temp agency, or not a temp agency. It would be like, oh, I'm trying to find an analogy, where like you can only demand certain things of other businesses, and in this sense, if they need you there, they need you there, and that's your decision that you can make. But I would just up the money. Like, I don't want to go to your business. Am I answering your question right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It sounded a little bit vague, but I hate driving. In California, it was horrible. And like sitting, or here, I imagine sitting on a train for an hour, like going to a place. No, I won't do it. And that's one of the reasons that I love being on my own, is I can just set that rule. Might mean you don't get work, but oh well. All right, anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much.